You're listening to LeaderCast, episode 187. Welcome to LeaderCast, Transforming Missions podcast with Tim Bias and Sarah Thomas, providing you with insights and resources you need to lead a movement of Jesus followers. Today we're having a conversation with Sam Heaton. Sam is the director of kids and youth at a church in St. Louis City, and I know Sam, Tim and I know Sam from when he served with me as an intern. I think it was almost a decade ago. You'll hear him talk a little bit about that, but specifically why we wanted to talk with Sam is the father of two young children. He is married, serving in the church, preparing for ordination, has family in another city. And so we wanted to know, what does rest, relaxation, and play look like in this season? How did you navigate it with youth? And what's your wisdom for folks moving forward? As a reminder, you can find show notes for this episode at transformingmission.org/187. Without any further wait, here's our conversation with Sam.
Well, Sam, welcome to LeaderCast. To get us started, would you tell us who you are and what you get paid to do?
Yeah, my name is Sam Heaton, and I work at a church in St. Louis City. I'm the director of kids and youth there. So in addition to teaching about Jesus to kids and youth, I also do some general church things like preaching and outreach, and I also am in the process of ordination.
And you're also, not that this is what you get paid to do, but in terms of who you are, come on, you've got two little humans in your world that...
I have a 2-year-old who, he's a boy, his name is Kuiper, and he's a big bundle of energy. And we also have a 2-month-old that was born last December, and her name is Mabel, and she's really cute.
She was your Christmas present this last year.
She was actually supposed to be due on the 24th, but she came on the 17th. So.
Leave it to women. Show up early.
Exactly.
Sam, you already know that part of what we do with the podcast, with LeaderCast, is talk about courageous leadership. So what does being a courageous leader mean to you?
Yeah, I think being a courageous leader, at least to me, and I was thinking about this kind of in negative terms, like, what does it look like to me when I am a scared leader or a timid leader? And so kind of working backward from that, I kind of think about it as working out of an authentic relationship with Jesus and letting my gifts and my creativity and my leading flow from the grace and security that comes from that relationship. So I think it's really easy, at least for me, to lead from like the latest fads or, whatever's most convenient or whatever somebody else is doing, who I think is doing a really good job, when I don't have just Jesus anchoring me down and filtering my gifts and my personality and my talents and my passions through that. And so when I find myself, starting to make moves out of convenience or copying the way somebody else does it, those are the times that I know I need to go back to the fountain of grace and the gospel and let that get the ministry juices flowing again in the direction of bravery and risk and authenticity.
Thank you for that. I'm thinking now, as you've said what you've said, when we talk about courageous leadership, there are certain characteristics, some of the things, purpose, self-awareness, accountability. But when we were thinking about another characteristic, like one of the things we know is that courageous leaders know the importance of rest, relaxation, and play. And when we were thinking about people to help us with that conversation, Sarah didn't hesitate to say, we need to talk with Sam. So,
and it wasn't the rest and relaxation part.
Great. I'm honored by that. I'm glad that is my legacy in your mind.
So, As we continue to talk about courageous leadership from the importance of rest, relaxation, and play, that's what we're going to talk about the rest of this podcast. And because Sarah knows what questions to ask specifically for you, she's going to start.
Okay, I feel like, Sam, before we even get into these questions, I need to tell a story on you. So, because we've set it up and people are probably going, well, how does she know that about Sam? So Sam was one of the interns when I was in Cincinnati, and we had a ministry called Awaken the City. And there was one summer that a group of them, they knew how to have fun. Like they created fun. Is that fair, Sam? That you all created fun for yourselves, even when there wasn't fun? I mean, even when the building was flooding, you found a way to have fun.
For sure.
I mean, that was just a part of who you are. And the lasting image in my mind of Sam and this cohort of people, and I'm saying Sam because I think Sam might have been the ringleader in this. Maybe not. Maybe Trey was a part of leading this force too. That I have this picture of the five of you with boom whackers, and you can Google what a boom whacker is. It's a children's toy with boom whackers in your arms as if they are weapons that are going to protect you, with face paint on and dressed up, and they were running around the building that they were staying in trying to capture bats that were in the building.
And can I also say that we were terrible at catching bats? I think one of us actually got hit by the bat. I forget who that was. That might have been Denise, but
yeah, I don't think any bats ever were caught and released into the wild, but I do think there was a lot of fun that happened in the process of chasing down said bats. And I don't think any bats were harmed in the play either.
They were not. No, I don't think we could have if we tried. And also, Sarah, I would like to say that I remember when you brought those boom whackers out to us, you had very noble intentions for them. You had bought like so many of them for the purposes of worship, like we were going to use them in all of the, for all the worship songs. I don't think we ever ended up doing that. I think they immediately became a weapon. And I mean, they were good for catching bats. They made us feel better and more secure in the building. So they did serve a purpose, but
yeah, I was clearly delusional in the use of boom whackers for worship, and we were trying to find some fun, playful things, and that just didn't happen. Okay, you now know why I was thinking of Sam for this conversation. So the first question for you, Sam, to continue down the route of fun, is you're in a very different season of life. You have already said that you are a dad, you're a husband, you're serving in full-time ministry. Life looks very different than what I just described when you were still in college. So what does fun look like for you in this season of your life?
Yeah, I love the way that you framed that, because that was kind of how I was going to frame it if I didn't hear everything that you just said. Because if you were just to ask, what does fun look like for you, it would sound a lot more like chasing bats with boom whackers. But, I have a 2-year-old now, a 2-year-old and a 2-month-old. And so I've kind of learned through my, 28-year-old wisdom here that fun is super subjective, and it's really based on what season of life you're in. Because my fun is now filtered through my 2-year-old's fun. It's filtered through Kuiper's fun and what he finds fun. So fun is now, we go outside and he immediately runs to the mulch and he gets 2 handfuls of mulch and throws it at me. And so like throwing mulch and looking at airplanes in the sky and collecting leaves and getting them in a pile and then getting mad when they get out of the pile and then putting them back in the pile again. Like that's what he finds fun, And so I think my life would be very miserable if I didn't join him in that and find that fun as well. And that's also kind of, in a way, like not to get too like over spiritualize this or anything, but there's an author that I like named Mike Cosper, and he writes about how we live in a disenchanted age. Like everything is, he's kind of riffing off of the philosopher Charles Taylor, and how we live in this age where everything is over rationalized, and it takes there's kind of a magic that God infused into reality for us. And so we're supposed to find wonder in nature. We're supposed to find wonder in reality. We're supposed to find wonder in life. And in the age that we're living in, that's being made very difficult. And so, at least for me, Kuiper is, when I do that, I get to enter in with Kuiper into this realm where it really is crazy how we have airplanes that fly in the sky, and that we can throw mulch and it gets everywhere. And like there's just a magic of reality that, that God infused into it, that I get to enter in and see again with him. So that's been fun.
So what's fun look like on the teams that you're on, with whom you work?
Yeah, especially for COVID, it's been very difficult on everybody. And so I work with, I lead a youth group as part of my job, and it was very difficult for them, just like everybody else, really, right? But especially for younger people, college students, and the junior high and high schoolers that I work with, it was very hard just not being able to be social with people again. And so it's not the problem for them wasn't just like, I can't have fun, but I think like fun is best when it's a community event, right? It's not just sitting at home watching Netflix, even though that can be fun, but it's best when you're doing it with other people and you're doing it with friends. And they were, hurting for that for such a long time. So I think we kind of transitioned at one point, because doing Zoom meetings is terrible. And I'm sure you guys can relate to this, because I'm sure both of you have been on many, many, many Zoom meetings over the last year. And I think it's especially terrible for them because they had Zoom meetings for school. So they were doing that 6 to 8 hours a day. And so when we did Zoom meetings again, and I was trying to, we were trying to read through, what was it, screw tape letters and talk about it with each other. And it just did not go very well. And so I think we kind of just transitioned to using, not that we didn't do anything serious and pray with each other and things like that, of course, but we kind of transitioned to making that, a fun time together, and really focusing on the fun and the together, because that's what they needed mentally and emotionally and spiritually at that point. So we did like a Bob Ross night, which was great. I don't think any of them had heard of Bob Ross, and I'm terrible at painting. So that was kind of a weird thing for me, but we did a Bob Ross night where we sent out wigs and paint and canvases, and we watched a Bob Ross video together. We did our best, and some of them drew aliens, and it was great. Some of them were actually very good and beyond what I could ever hope to do ever. So we did that. We did like a digital escape room. We did other things, during the height of COVID, especially during the winter. And just really, I think we really leaned on fun during that time.
So you may have already hit on this by talking about what you just shared about what you were doing with the youth. I'm wondering if you can share with our listeners about how you go about creating a playful, fun environment. And I kind of hesitate to even ask you that, because I think it's just second nature to you, that who you are is, I can't imagine a Sam that doesn't have fun and isn't finding joy in whatever you're doing. I mean, for goodness sakes, I get irritated when mulch starts flying everywhere because I hate the taste of it. And you describe that as fun with your 2-year-old. So how do you create playful, fun environments with people?
Yeah, first, I don't think I do think it is a part of how kind of God wired me. And I will say that when people, because I've had people say, oh, like you really are a youth pastor, aren't you? Or you really are a youth and kids pastor. And at first, I think I kind of got a little offended by that, because that I think it was saying like, oh, you have a very childlike demeanor, and maybe me just getting in my feelings about, I don't know, being a youth pastor, kind of trying to be like the playful, fun guy. But I really do think that's how God wired me. He wired me to have a very serious side and a very goofy side. And I think that what I'm doing now really leans into both of those things. So yeah, I do think it's a little bit second nature, but I also want to say, there is this thing in youth ministry, and I think this can apply to any type of ministry and just ministry in general with adults, college students, anything. There's a juxtaposition in how people think of youth ministry between, super playfulness on one side and, let's just have fun and entertain kids and like, oh, we should just be doing Bible studies and we should really just be, focusing on Jesus all the time, whatever that means. And so, like, yeah, the prevailing model is we have to entertain kids. We have to have a lot of fun. We have to play, an hour and a half of games, and then we'll sprinkle some Jesus in at the end and call the youth ministry. And then people in my tradition are much more curmudgeonly about it and kind of poo-poo all of that. And they're like, that's immature. We shouldn't be playing in ministry. We should be, doing Bible studies and all of this. And I really do think, and I'm not the only one who thinks this, right? And I'm not the only one who does this, but I think it is really possible to do both. It's possible to, throw a water balloon, in a kid's face, which is a lot of fun, and then go do an exegesis of Romans. Like, it really is possible. And, I'm not saying I'm perfect at it or anything like that, but it is possible to do serious exegetical Bible study or theology or serving with those who are struggling in poverty or homelessness, and then go, play a game of kickball. I think you can do both. And to some extent, you have to do both to be an authentic community. I really do think that play and having fun is a part of what it means to be a new creature in Christ. Like, I know there are parts of the Psalms and Job where, it's describing creation and how God created these wild animals and, the Leviathan to frolic in the water. And then, when Isaiah is describing the new creation, he's talking about children playing over the holes of cobras, because that's what, when we're safe and we're secure and we're resting in the security and salvation of God, then we can play, right? And there's also that part in the Gospels where Jesus was critiquing, the current generation, and he compared it to children who refused to play. They wouldn't mourn with John, and they wouldn't dance with Jesus. And so part of what the new creation is, and part of what Jesus is calling us to do, is to dance with him, to have fun. And so I think that there's, if you are saying, if there's people out there, I don't know if anybody listening to this would identify with, we can't do any of those fun things. Well, if you're studying the Bible as part of your serious time and you're reading about, part of the new creation being dance and playfulness, then I think that there's a disjunction there. So it really is possible, and I really think that should be a part of our churches, like play and fun. Like, it should be a part of our churches, and I think that would help with some of the things that we're even struggling with today. So,
Sam, it's been a long time since I was a youth director, but I do remember the days where we had water balloon fights in Jesus' name.
For sure. And I actually, maybe I shouldn't tell this story. I hope that nobody on my ordination committee is listening to this. But when I was a youth, so one of my friends, I was a part of, introducing him to Jesus. He became a Christian. And I think I instigated this. Maybe I shouldn't take credit for it because I'm not sure. But he kind of got baptized by water balloons. This was at a Methodist church, so maybe, they would get more in trouble since I'm telling this to you guys. But we baptized him with water balloons. I think he did have an official baptism, like, kind of before that. And then we had windows right outside the sanctuary. And, he went outside and we threw water balloons at him during the middle of the service. And so that's a bad sacramentology, right? Like, we shouldn't do that all the time. But I do think it's a good picture of the playfulness that we are supposed to be in the new creation. We're baptized with water balloons in a way, like we're baptized into a place where, of course, there's still serious problems while we're on this side of eternity, but we're looking towards a time when we will be able to dance on the holes of cobras. And so we're supposed to be living into that, at least in part now.
Sarah, I think I interrupted you. You were going to say something else to Sam.
Well, it still applies. I appreciate so much, Sam, the authenticity that you're bringing to what does it mean to be human and what does it mean to follow Jesus in really a holistic way, that we can't leave this part of ourselves that likes to have fun and find joy at the door of the church or the button of a Zoom meeting, because it's part of who we are and how we were created. So thank you for that.
I'll second that. Thank you. As I've been listening here, Sam, you're a husband, you're a father, you're working as a leader with youth, you're a son, a brother, you've been working in a pandemic, you're a human being. What and fun loving, I can already tell that. So what wisdom would you have for other leaders in regard to rest and relaxation?
Yeah, I think COVID really flipped the tables for a lot of us on how we think about things. And I've really started to think about everything, just kind of like we talked about with the first question. Like I've started to talk about everything in terms of seasons and what season you're in. And so I just say really question what Sabbathing looks like in the season that you're in right now, because it might not look the same as it was, a year ago. And so, if you look at Sabbath in scripture, and I wouldn't consider myself a Sabbatarian, I turn lights out on Sundays and everything like that. But I do think that there's a lot of really applicable things that scripture has to say about what the Sabbath is. And I can get a little bit ranty about this, but it has negative and positive parts of it. And I think one of those negative parts of it, like don't do this kind of things, is really important for us today. And it has to do with the way that we use technology. And so I think Western people in general are very bad at how we approach technology with discernment and intentionality. And I'm a Western people too, just to say that. But in terms of Sabbath, I think we really have to look at how we're using social media, how we're using the technology that we keep in our pockets all day. I think it was in Alan Noble's Disruptive Witness, which is a really good book, that he talks about how we've turned into, we've gone from a place where people used to have a lot of margins during your day, like you get off of work and then you wouldn't really have anything to do until you came home to your family, or you were going from one place to the other, or you would have just kind of this space at the end of your day where you didn't really know what to do with. And now we have all of these margin fillers. We have little rectangles in our pockets and mid-sized rectangles in our laptop sleeves and big rectangles on our walls, and we fill our margins with all of those. Yeah, that's right. All those. And I've got mine in my left hand right here. And and so we just fill all of our margins with that. And so even what is supposed to be kind of our Sabbath time, or that time we have off, also becomes just a big margin time that we fill with the same things. We fill that with social media, and we fill that with news media and all of that. And I think it's become especially bad during COVID, especially for ministry leaders too, because they're, these media corporations are making billions of dollars off of not just, because we had always known the danger of social media as, playing the comparison game, comparing yourselves with others, getting endorphin hits off of likes and things like that. But with the rise of doom scrolling, which if anyone doesn't know what that is, it's, going to these different kinds of media, whether it's news media or social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, and in full preparation and kind of seeking to get angry or depressed about what we read, and just keeping on scrolling through that and getting angrier and angrier and more depressed, even though it leads us into these terrible places. They're making millions of dollars off of us doom scrolling, and they're able to get us addicted to that. And I think that I've struggled with that a lot this year, especially with, I have like fear of missing out, FOMO, on the news. Like I really want to know everything before everybody else does. And so in times, especially where it seems like there's just negative news coming out, that can be very depressing and anger inducing, especially when we don't have the agency sometimes to directly, change these things. And so I think that's been one of the biggest dangers to my rest. And I don't think I'm alone in that. So if we just go into neutral with the way that we approach our technology, and we treat, if our time off is just not working and it's just another margin time, and we go into margin mode, that's not going to give us rest. And, that's going to expose and amplify our restlessness. I saw a quote, and I can't take credit for this. I can't remember where it's from, but that a restless thumb is the sign of a restless soul. And I really think that's true. And I think that, we have a lot to do in terms of, I know you guys are talking about self-awareness. So we have a lot to do in terms of self-awareness when we're, dealing with technology, because ministry leadership really requires a kind of deep rest that creates this creative, reflective ministry that we're called to. But we can't do that if we're drowning ourselves in this, and if we're, not at least going into it with some sort of awareness that we're called to a transcendent truth that we can bear witness to in these spaces, instead of just kind of going with the flow and getting sucked into the doom scrolling. Hopefully that made some amount of sense.
It did, and I'm curious now, and not to do anything else other than ask a question. Would you recommend leaders especially, but for all of us, to step away from social media occasionally, or to put the phones down and for a period of time not have anything to do with it? Is that, I'm not looking for anything. I'm just a question based on what you've said.
Yeah, and I think that'd be helpful. And I think overall, it's also helpful just identifying when we interact with social media and any kind of media, and when we don't. Like, it's probably not helpful. I know for me, the first thing I check is my email when I wake up in the morning. I very intentionally, and maybe a part of that answer is, I don't have any social media on my phone, and I don't have, an open internet browser on my phone. There are a number of reasons for that, and that's one of them, is to kind of, help me with that, help give me some focus. But even with that, I still find these ways. I'm still checking my email in the morning, but I think approaching it, even when we do, with some amount of prayerfulness and reflection and intentionality, can only help us. But yeah, I think also just taking time off from it every now and then, as kind of planned, I don't know, Sabbaths or fasts, is a great idea.
So the other thing I'm hearing you say, though, is around self-awareness. It's knowing who you are and how you're responding or reacting, and then what those triggers are. And that's another thing I'm hearing you say, is that maybe a healthier way isn't to set it aside and have a Sabbath from the social media, but understanding how you best interact with social media. Am I hearing that?
Yeah, I really do think that's true. And I don't want to, because part of the fear for me here is, I don't want to separate us from that space, because that is also a place for, ministry leadership. That's a place for ministry in general. And I mean, we're doing a podcast right now, so I can't say technology is terrible and let's get off of it and let's, just cede the space to other people. And I think there's a place to witness to the gospel, especially in deeply divided times like we live in right now. There's a place to, inject some joy and reasonableness, and all those things that we see in the fruits of the Spirit and 1 Timothy 3 and Titus 1. Like, there's a place to inject all of those in social media. But I think that we still have to be very careful about how we do that and how we're just using it in general.
Well, and honestly, I'm just curious. I'm not pushing for anything. It sounds like to me that there's a healthy interaction with whatever we're involved in. And do you have to set it aside for rest and relaxation? Or is that a way in which you participate using the technology as a way of rest and relaxation? There has to be something in the middle and not on the extremes. And so I appreciate what you've said. I mean, I'm learning from you. I appreciate what you're saying.
Well, and listening to you, Sam, the intentionality and the recognition of what is happening in this moment. Even though you're home, that doesn't mean your television always needs to be on. But it's that intentionality of why are we using this? And I've said to many people, the primary reason I'm on Facebook is so that I can see pictures of my great nieces and nephews. I mean, the God's honest truth. And cute puppies. I mean, come on. Like, the rest of it, I don't care about. And so, what's the intention when you go to it? And Tim, I love what you said, if it's impeding your rest, relaxation, and play, recognize that. But for some people, that's where they find the rest, relaxation, and play.
Right.
And we just need to know where are you at in the midst of that? Yeah.
Yeah. That was helpful because I can tend to be very pessimistic about the use of technology, and I think that's a helpful corrective. Puppies are helpful. Puppies and nieces.
Yeah. Kids and puppies, they remind you of what's really, really right about the world. So, anything that we haven't asked you about rest, relaxation, and play?
I do want to say that, and this is just kind of something that I'll pass along. I have a spiritual director that I kind of work with, spiritual director / counselor, and he's always quick to tell me whenever I'm in a place of restlessness or ask of me, like, where am I taking mini Sabbaths during the day? And so I also just want to say that, we need to find these places, not just once a week, but as a lifestyle. And so part of that for me during COVID was, I was locked down. I wasn't working at the church anymore. I was working from home. And so all of the meetings that normally would have taken place in person were by phone now or Zoom. But when I would do those, I would start to, just go out and walk in my neighborhood. And this was back, when it was warm. It's starting to get warm again now, thankfully. And that was just a very restful thing for me, because I'd walk out. Sarah, you probably have some idea of how terrible I am at geography. So I'd get a little lost sometimes, and I'd, just try to find my way back. Maybe spend a little bit of time in prayer, or just looking around or listening to music. But that was a very Sabbathy. That's not a word, but Sabbathy thing for me.
Create words on this podcast. It's all good.
There you go.
Thanks for that, Sam. Tim's going to start with the first question.
Sam, what color crayon did you always pick first as a kid?
Oh, gosh. I can't remember. Does that mean I'm old? I'd probably say red. Probably red.
Okay, here it is. What food is always in your fridge, or what food do you eat all the time?
I think this is where you want me to say eggnog, so I'm going to go ahead and say eggnog.
Oh, you don't have to say eggnog.
No, I am a big eggnog fan. I usually get it from Jungle Jim's in Cincinnati, and I'm 6 hours away from that, unfortunately. So I don't have it as much as I used to, which is probably very good for my weight. But I still have it occasionally, and I actually just discovered a really good recipe that came from Dwight D. Eisenhower. It's the best eggnog that I've ever made by myself. So I'm probably going to start having eggnog more, and we'll have to subsequently start running more so that I don't gain too much eggnog weight. My blood eggnog content doesn't get over 0.05.
So you can actually get eggnog other than Christmas time?
You can. You just have to go to the right places, Did you ever go to Jungle Jim's in Cincinnati?
I did,
okay.
But I didn't look for eggnog.
Oh, well, you were missing out.
There was eggnog in the refrigerator in the Erie building all summer long.
Well, let me also tell you that was Tara, who I met while working for you, while we were both working for you. That was Tara's first gift to me. And she's eggnog? Now my wife. So yes, her first gift was eggnog. Yeah, and my first gift to her, paying her back, was milk and Airheads. So.
Sam, who's the one person you'd want with you on a deserted island?
Gosh, I feel like I'm required to say Tara here, and I definitely would want to spend. I would want to spend all that time on a deserted island with Tara, and that'd be awesome. It's probably not a very interesting answer, your spouse.
Along the same lines, what's the last thing that you said to a loved one?
Oh, it was probably something about, because Tara just went upstairs and I had just changed Kuiper's poopy diaper. So it probably had something to do with the poopy diaper. So very romantic.
Very honest for where you are at. And
yeah.
What's one habit you've picked up during the pandemic?
So this one was probably something that I hadn't really done before. I've started reading, not not, I was going to say not religiously, that'd be a kind of funny thing to say, but not like all the time. But I've started reading poetry. I found that it's something that is in some ways very against who I thought I was, and also very much who I've always been, because I really like, even though I sometimes don't consider myself a very artsy or poetic person, I really like finding meanings in things. And so I've been going through, I think it's Philip Ryken's A Treasury of Christian Poetry. And so going through a lot of like John Donne and other, T.S. Eliot, people like that. And I think that's been a kind of grounding thing during the pandemic.
So you've mentioned books a few times in our conversation. What's your favorite all-time book, or what book are you reading right now?
Oh, those are hard questions. I love C.S. Lewis. Sometimes I call him my grandpa. So I'd probably just have to say C.S. Lewis's books for favorite books. I know that's also probably a popular one to say. But right now, I'm going through, I feel like I'm always reading like 7 books, and I'm reading them all at like 15% pace. So there's a lot I'm going through right now. Let me think. Yeah, so one I've just started that I think is it's going to be very good for me is Gentle and Lowly by Dane Ortland. Just going through like the heart of the gospel, and God's heart for people who are in a very broken place, and it's already kind of been rocking my soul a little bit. So yeah, that's what I'm reading right now.
So, what's one of your hobbies or little known skills that you have? That little known to the people
outside
around
of
you.
chasing bats.
Yeah, so this is a good one right now, because I just picked up something like within the last couple of weeks, is wood splitting. So it makes me sound very manly, but it's really just like, I like fire. I don't know if you know this, Sarah, but we had many fires at the Erie building, all of them outside in metal trash cans. Maybe that's one of our things that you hadn't known about yet. And I say many years after being employed by both
and
of you.
many.
But anyway, yeah, so I've started, I got like a big wood maul, like a 9-pound wood maul. And I think like, it's almost become an addiction, because it's very like cathartic for me. And I've even started like, thinking up sermons and daydreaming lessons and plans and things like that while I'm out there splitting wood. So yeah, that's my new hobby nobody knows about, unless you're following my Instagram story, which is like 12 people.
Well, Sam, thank you. Thanks for taking time out of your day and your schedule to be with us and to share laughter and joy and your perspectives and stories on where you're at right now, and your wisdom on rest, relaxation, and play. Tim, any last minute words?
Sam, it's been a delight and a pleasure. And like with many people we have on the podcast, I learned something, but I also get to be more the person that I think God created me to be. And so having this conversation today, since it's all about me, I feel pretty good. So I'm grateful that you were on the podcast. Thank you.
Yeah, well, likewise. Thank you to both of you. I think the only times I've ever talked to you, either of you, in the last few years has been for like job references and stuff. So.
All good.
So yes,
all good. Good to see your face, and please pass along a hello to Tara and give those babies a love. And yeah, enjoy the season.
Will do.
It's over in the blink of an eye, as every parent will tell you, and probably already has, and you're tired of hearing it.
For sure.
Thanks, Sam. I hope as we have journeyed through this season of talking about and reflecting on rest, relaxation, and play, you've found some moments of laughter. As you can tell from this episode, we certainly did, as we had a conversation with Sam. So thanks again, Sam, for joining us. You may have also noticed that, yes, we recorded that conversation a while back. Sam's daughter is now, I believe, pushing 7 months old. So here are your questions to talk it out or write it down for this episode. First question is, what does Sabbath look like for you in this season? The second question is, what margin do you intentionally create with technology? And finally, the third question, where are you finding mini Sabbaths during the day? Once again, you can find show notes for this episode at transformingmission.org/podcast, and you're looking for episode 187. Or go directly to this episode at transformingmission.org/187. And remember, who you are is how you lead. Bye for now.